my name is Annie Liu and I'm on the UTAs for KN 251. Today we'll be mainly focusing on tips to remember the vertebra column and other mnemonics to help along the way. This week's a bit heavy on naming, so I'll be supplying tips and tricks in order to help you. My email is listed right down here below, so please feel free to reach out if you need any help or have any questions. Thank you. First, let's go over the vertebra column. So we actually have three different kinds right here. We have the cervical, right here in red. We have the thoracic, right here in the purple. And then we have the lumbar that we're going to focus on primarily, which is right here in the green. So, as you can see, the cervical is the first 7, the thoracic is the next set of 12, and then the lumbar is the set of 5 vertebrae. Now, the way that so many people do to memorize the cervical was the first set of the 7 vertebrae was that it starts with C, which is closest to the beginning of the alphabet. And these are your neck vertebrae. The thoracic, on the other hand, the way that I actually remember this is that because it's close to your thorax, so it's thoracic. And then the lumbar, the way that I thought of it was lumbar, lower back. So let me just write that out real quick. So the way I thought of it was lumbar, lower back. So what actually helped me a lot to remember how many vertebrae was in each set, so for the cervical, for the thoracic, and for the lumbar, was actually when people ate food and such. So we know that the cervical was 7 vertebrae, and then the thoracic was 12 vertebrae, and then the lumbar, which is 5 vertebrae. So the way I thought of it was during breakfast, you eat breakfast maybe around 7 a.m., and then you eat lunch around 12 p.m., and then you eat dinner around 5 p.m. And I know it's not related, but this honestly really helped me to remember how many vertebrae was in each set. Just because, 7 a.m. it's the first breakfast, so I remember cervical. Too big. And then for 12 p.m., I remember it's thoracic because it's right in the middle. Okay, I spelled that wrong. I apologize. And then 5 p.m., it's the very last meal, so it is lumbar. Right here. So right now we are looking at the cervical vertebrae, and this is something that is really important to not get confused on, as this can easily come up for your exam as well. And this is atlas and axis. Now, atlas is C1, which is right here, and this just means that it is the first vertebrae. And then axis, is C2, which means that it is the second vertebrae. Alright, so the way that I actually remembered atlas was, so this is the first one right here, was actually relating it to the globe. And what I mean by that is how the atlas, which is C1, which is, again, like I said prior, is the first vertebrae, is in contact with your head. So let me just draw a quick globe right here. Yeah, so since this is the first vertebrae, it's also in contact with your head. And because it's in contact with your head, I relate the world or the globe to your head since they're both spherical. And it's kind of holding it up. Also, another thing to note is that atlas is actually responsible for the yes movement. So nodding your head back and forth, right? And the way I actually remembered this was atlas was at yes. I know it sounds a little bit strange, but this was honestly the way I remembered this, and it did work. All right. The next one is axis, okay? And this is the axis right here. Now, the way I remembered axis was since it actually has an axis of rotation. Do you see the dents popping out? So right here, here's a dent. So do you see this poking out right here? It's actually responsible for the no movement. So that will be rotating your head this way. And this is exactly on how we can rotate our head since it's around the axis of rotation. Here, let me draw that just a little bit better. So it's on the axis of rotation right here, okay? So again, that's how I remember axis was that axis of rotation. And here is a dent that pokes through, and this portion right here is actually C1. And then this portion right here, plus a dent, like, this part as well, is C2, or the axis. Okay, so if you had to recognize which vertebrae is which, just based on the appearance, here is a good tip that actually saved me a lot of time on the exam, and just in general. So look at the body right here. Here, let me just circle them. So here are the bodies, okay? And again, this one is cervical, this one is thoracic, and this one is lumbar. So do you see on how it kind of grows in size as it's going from cervical, which is around this big, then here's thoracic, and then here is lumbar, which is the biggest, right? The reason is actually because of how much weight each region has to support to have to hold up in a way. So the cervical, like we just previously stated, mainly just supports your head and won't need to be as big and strong as a lumbar right here, which supports much more and supports a majority of your body. So my tip for you is to pay attention to the size of the body, and that can definitely give a clue to which vertebrae it is from. Thank you so much for watching my video, and happy studying!